So, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Chrissy Beswick, and I'm the chairperson for the ACE Women's Network at Rowan University. We're so glad you could join us today for our virtual event. These are new to us, and I know new to you, so we hope that you find them informative and that you can learn some great tips and tricks to start incorporating into your lives. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. During today's event, each attendee will be muted and your screen will also be turned off. This is to make sure that all of our attendees are able to clearly see and hear our panelists. If you have questions during the event, please use the chat option to direct them to Andy Watkins, who's our programming committee chairperson. She'll help us to field the questions at the end of the event. I just want to take a moment to thank TD Bank for being a sponsor of our programming for this entire year and especially for today's event. TD's generous grant really helps us here at the AC Women's Network to provide dynamic professional development for women in Rowan University and beyond. So we're very grateful for their continued support of our group. Today's program features a panelist style of guest speakers. So we have Mary Kay Anthony, who is the Vice President and Senior Trust Advisor for TD Wealth Private Client Group. We also have Carla Reines, VP, Store Manager, and Cindy Smolsky, VP, Senior Relationship Manager, TD Private Client Group. I'm very excited to hear from our panelists today. I'm really looking forward to learning some useful tips that I can start to incorporate in my financial well-being. So thank you all very much for being with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mary Kay.
Oh, thanks, Chrissy. Can everyone see me okay? Am I okay, Chrissy? Can everyone, am I showing up here on the screen?
You look great.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So happy to be here again. And Chrissy, thank you so much for the shout out. You know, TD is thrilled to sponsor these events. Hold on just a minute. Chrissy, I lost myself. I can't see. Sorry, slight technical difficulty. I'm talking to a blank screen because I just lost myself.
Okay, well, we can still see you. So what you might have to do is
as long as you can see me, I'll just talk to the camera. That's fine. Thanks for bearing with me. This is actually my first virtual presentation, everyone. So thank you so much for your patience today and for kind of getting through this with me. Certainly hope that you're all doing well. I know that the past couple months have brought a lot of change for all of us. I was just discussing with the ladies that, you know, the last time I saw you all back in February was right before things started to change. And was really, really glad to be asked back to speak today because, you know, we're living in the shadow of COVID-19 right now. And it's left a lot of people feeling very anxious and hyper aware about their own health and mortality, which I think are very normal and natural feelings based on everything going on right now. And what we're seeing in our business is an increased focus among our clients in reviewing and updating their estate planning documents. And those of you that were present for the presentation back in February might remember that I started to very briefly get into that topic, but we weren't able to really get into it in detail. So, you know, we thought that it might be a good idea today to try to get into that topic with a little more of the nitty-gritty. Since that's something that's on everybody's mind right now. And so many of us are thinking about the ways that we can protect ourselves and having to come to grips with, you know, the difficulty of what's going on in our world right now and what that means for all of us in keeping both ourselves and our families safe. So let me go ahead and share my screen here and get okay, looks like that worked. Can everybody see can everyone see the slides all right? We good?
Yep, it's perfect. Go right ahead.
Okay. So I want to jump in here and we're going to talk a little bit about some basic estate planning. Okay. Here. All right. So here's some questions to think about as we get going. What is an estate? Seems like it would be a simple question, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't actually know that. Why do you need an estate plan? What happens if you don't have an estate plan? Let's go over some of the basic estate planning documents. How does it help you manage your financial affairs? A revocable living trust, estate distribution at death, what is a will? Probate, outright bequest, what is a trust? Healthcare directives and living will, gifting, and an estate tax overview. It sounds like a lot, but I promise you we're going to get through it all and in a way that's easy for everyone to understand. Okay, so what is an estate? An estate consists of all your assets, and it includes cash and bank accounts, marketable securities, your real estate, so your home is part of your estate, your business entities, your retirement accounts, which can include 401k, IRA, etc., your insurance policies, and of course your personal property, which is your furnishings, jewelry, collectibles, artwork, your car. Your car would be considered part of your personal property. Why do you need an estate plan? So you need to designate someone to manage your financial affairs if you become incapacitated. Now, the question about how do we determine if someone's incapacitated comes up a lot. And the answer is it varies. Some people want to designate a doctor to be the person that decides if they're incapacitated. Some people might say that they want 2 family members to have to agree that you are incapacitated. So you want to keep that in mind, that it's not a hard and fast rule, and it really varies person to person as to how you want that to be decided on your behalf. You need an estate plan to designate someone to make healthcare decisions on your behalf if you become incapacitated. It allows you to distribute your estate to designated heirs upon your death, to designate an executor who will administer your estate. We're going to come back to that one. That's a big one. And to designate guardians for your minor children. So what happens if you don't have an estate plan? So the court might have to appoint a guardian or conservator to manage your financial affairs if you become incapacitated. No one will have the authority to make healthcare decisions on your behalf if you become incapacitated, and court intervention may be required. This happens more often than you would think. State law will dictate how your estate will be distributed at death, which means that you would be subject to state intestacy laws. And when you die, a court may have to appoint someone to administer your estate or be guardian for your minor children. So what happens if we don't have an estate plan? Those are the scary questions that none of us really like to think about, and especially as parents that we don't really want to have to think about. But they're things that we have to consider and we have to confront head on in order to do what's best for our family and to keep ourselves safe. So these are the basic estate planning documents that we're going to go over today. Okay, the will, the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, because they're not the same thing, although they are often confused by people. Living wills, revocable living trusts, and irrevocable trusts. And I apologize if you're hearing a child screaming. That is my son. Hopefully you can't hear him. His grandmother's taking care of him. We're all just keeping it real, right, ladies? Like this is okay. All right. So briefly, how do we manage our financial affairs during our lifetime? You can look into hiring an investment manager. You can hire someone or an entity that could manage your investments during your lifetime. So at TD Bank, in our wealth group, this is something that we do for the majority of our clients. We are hired to manage investments during a client's lifetime. A power of attorney. You can designate an agent who will have the authority to manage your financial affairs if you become incapacitated. And a revocable living trust. This is a trust that becomes effective while you are alive, and it can provide that a trustee can manage the trust assets and carry out the terms of the trust agreement if you become incapacitated. Now, a financial power of attorney and a revocable living trust are often confused, but they're not the same thing, okay? So a revocable living trust has become an increasingly popular estate planning tool because it can govern the management of your assets while you are alive, and it can act as a will substitute after you die. Probate can be avoided if all of your assets are held in a revocable living trust. And your affairs, you can be kept private by avoiding probate and can help diminish the possibility of your estate plan being contested. So sometimes we'll have people ask us, so why would I get a revocable living trust if I could just get a financial power of attorney? They're different mechanisms. What I will share is that a revocable living trust is more comprehensive in approach than a financial power of attorney. And the reason for that is that the authority of a trustee is more clear and less susceptible to being questioned than an agent under a financial power of attorney. In general, you know, showing up with the agent for financial power of attorney document, it can be touchy as to whether you're going to be able to have access to information and make decisions. I'm not saying that you can't, but in general, the authority of a trustee is a stronger approach. This is more of a practical consideration. You know, it's just easier for a trustee to operate. It's a stronger estate planning tool. But what we see a lot in our business is that people hear the word trust and they get kind of nervous and they think, well, if my money's in a trust, it means the money's all tied up. I can't touch the money. I just need a power of attorney. That's really a misconception about trust, and it's really not necessarily true. And especially when you're dealing with a revocable living trust, you're dealing with a trust that protects you and your assets really throughout your life, and especially in the later years of your life. It allows you to have somebody potentially come in, you know, whoever you name as trustee. Often it's yourself, but sometimes then you'll have maybe a bank in there or a trusted family member that's also named as well. And it allows for you to have other people to help guide and help you make those decisions. So it's just something to think about. Again, they're both perfectly valid tools, but in general, it is easier for a trustee to operate. So some more misconceptions about revocable living trusts. They don't provide asset or creditor protection because you have full control over the trust assets while you're alive and competent. Kind of coming back to the fact that when you have a revocable living trust, you very much still, you have control over that money. Oftentimes people with revocable trusts are taking money still from the trust, they're making distributions. So you're not going to have asset or creditor protection, okay? The assets held in a revocable living trust will be included in your taxable estate when you die, because you have control over the trust assets until you die, okay? So it's kind of that push and pull. When you have a revocable living trust, you have access to that money, you have full control over the money. It's a fantastic tool. It can really protect you if you were to become incapacitated, but you keep in mind that it does mean that because you maintain that control, it's going to be considered part of your taxable estate. Okay. So estate distribution at death. Here's just a couple things here. So this is like actually getting a little bit into property law. So joint property with right of survivorship. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. Beneficiary designation. Okay, so bank accounts, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance. So we're going to come back to this later. Beneficiary designations, they're very helpful. All right, so you'll think about, let's say that you have an IRA and there's usually that spot on the form where you can designate someone as the beneficiary of that IRA, okay? They're very helpful, but they have to be carefully planned out with your estate plan, okay? They need to match. It is not uncommon for someone to, let's say they're opening up an account or they're opening up a new retirement account or they're buying life insurance, and in their haste of filling out paperwork, they might say, you know, maybe you're working with someone and they say, oh, well, just, you know, put it your spouse or your son or whatever you may put. Well, then you go to do an estate plan and maybe your will specifies something completely different. So beneficiary designations are very helpful. A lot of people have them, but you just want to keep in mind that they need to be carefully planned with your estate plan. All right. So whoever's preparing your estate planning document, you know, if you're working with an attorney, you want to make sure that they have all this information so that they can make sure that they match. And keep in mind too that with retirement accounts, you always want your attorney to be staying on top of the law and checking the law, because the law is very complicated in these cases and it's ever changing. Very recently, the Secure Act just overhauled the rule for retirement plans. they're still very helpful, and they're great tools. But I just urge you, don't just do one of these and then throw the form in a drawer. You want whoever's in charge of your estate plan documents to be working on this with you, okay? And then obviously you have your will, and you potentially have a revocable living trust. So joint ownership. So many married couples own joint property with a right of survivorship. And this means that when one owner dies, the surviving joint owner automatically has full ownership of the asset. And the disposition of this asset will not be governed by your will. A great example of this for a lot of married couples is your home. So most married couples own their home in joint property with right of survivorship. So if something happens to you or your spouse automatically has full ownership over that home if you die, and it's not going to be governed by what's in your will. Tenants in common is something that we see less often, but it does happen. It's jointly owned property with no right of survivorship, which means that you're owning something with someone, but if you die, that person does not automatically have full ownership of the asset. We don't see that as often, particularly when we're talking about a home that a married couple would own together, but it does occasionally happen. Okay, so beneficiary designation. So in certain situations, you will be able to designate a beneficiary who shall receive a particular asset upon your death. And such assets, they can include life insurance policies, they can include IRAs, retirement plans, some bank and investment accounts. And this is what I was talking about before, that you want to make sure that you understand that they're not governed by your will. So you want to make sure that when you're choosing who the beneficiary designation is, that again, you're taking your full estate plan into account, because you don't want to end up with a bunch of beneficiary designations that then don't match what's in your will, and then you have a dispute and there's tension there, and no one's really sure what you actually wanted. So you want to make sure that you view your estate plan as something full and cohesive, and that all of these documents work together. A trust can be a designated beneficiary. This is common in IRAs where the owner wants to spread the retirement distributions over a period of time. What I will say, though, is that this just became a little more complicated recently under the changes with the SECURE Act. The ability of a trust to hold retirement benefits has been limited a little bit by the SECURE Act. So I would strongly encourage you, this is a good reminder to talk to your attorney if this is something that you have been considering. If you have an IRA and you've been trying to think about if you'd like to designate the trust as a beneficiary of that IRA, it's not uncommon. We see it a lot, but it is complicated and the law is very complex. So you want to make sure that you're working with your attorney and that you follow up with your attorney. And this is a great time to do it right now. A lot of people are looking to change their estate planning documents in light of COVID. This would be a great time to reach out to your attorney to ask about this. So, will. Most people have a general understanding about what a will is, but let's just go over it. The will is a legal document that governs the distribution of your estate after you die. It governs all property owned in individual names. It does not apply to joint property and property that has beneficiary designation. So again, that comes back to if you own a home jointly with your spouse, your will is not going to govern that because you own it jointly. That house is going to go directly to your spouse. Property that has beneficiary designations. If you have an IRA and you have designated someone as the beneficiary of that IRA, that's not going to be part of your will, which is why you want those documents to be cohesive and working together. Your will needs to be validated by the probate or surrogate court before it becomes effective, and your estate can be distributed outright or held in trust for designated beneficiaries. So, some questions that you want to ask yourself, and I think that these are very important questions. One is, when was your will last updated? We have been seeing this a lot recently in our business. I've been getting a lot of questions from clients, and with everything that's going on in our world, I think a lot of people realizing that maybe they hadn't touched their will in 5, 10, 20 years, and things have changed. Their family situations have changed. They have more children. They have grandchildren. So ask yourself honestly, when was your will last updated? It is not uncommon in our business to encounter wills that haven't been touched for years. I also encourage you to really ask yourself, do you feel comfortable with your attorney? And in addition to that, would your family, spouse, children feel comfortable with your attorney if something were to happen to you? In particular, this is a question that women really need to be honest about with ourselves, because far too often, a lot of these estate planning decisions are made by men. And so women that are in relationships with men and married to men, often what we sometimes see is that maybe they've never met the family attorney, or they've met him or her only in passing. Maybe they don't really have a close, trusted relationship with that individual. And if something were to happen to your partner, you don't want to feel like you're not comfortable asking questions, that you don't understand what's going on. So it's very important to advocate for yourself. Very important to advocate for yourself and to really think, do I feel comfortable with this person? If I have children, are they going to feel comfortable calling this person if I'm not here? The attorney-client relationship is about chemistry as much as it is about knowledge. And, you don't just need an attorney representing you that you respect their knowledge. Of course, you need that and you want that. An attorney needs to do their job. But you also have to feel comfortable with them personally. And if that relationship doesn't feel right to you and that chemistry isn't there, you certainly have the right to seek new representation. So you want to be thinking about those things and really making sure that you feel comfortable with who's helping to make these big decisions for your family, because it's a huge decision, and it's a very personal relationship. Discussing our estate and most private affairs and financial affairs with someone, that's a personal relationship and one that you should feel good about and comfortable with. So interested parties to a will. So very important person, the executor, also sometimes called the personal representative. And this is a person, it can be a spouse, child, parent, sibling, friend. It can be an attorney friend. It can also be an entity. TD Bank will sometimes be named as an executor of an estate. And the executor is responsible for carrying out the terms of the will and administering the estate. Choosing your executor is key, and there's some things that I want to encourage you to think about. And the first is you want to think about appointing a backup executor. You want to think about the age of the executor, and you want to think about if it's really a job that this person can take on if something were to happen to you, because being an executor is a very big job. It can be a stressful job, especially for somebody to do alone. So you want to really think about your relationships and think about who would be able to remain objective, who would really be able to take that on to administer your estate. And I bring up thinking about age because something that we see quite a bit in our business is that, someone maybe writes a will, let's say they're older, they appoint an executor who's their exact same age. So let's say eventually someone passes away in their 80s. Well, if the named executor in the will was a peer, the executor now is also potentially in their 80s. And then sometimes you have issues of capacity, and if that person is really in any position to take that on. So you really want to think about that. Think about appointing a backup executor, a co-executor, and if that's something that the person that you're choosing to do that, if that's something that you really feel that they could do. Okay. Guardian. The guardian is responsible for caring for any minor children and will be effective if both parents are predeceased. I know I brought this up before. I bring it up again because it is just so important. It's shocking, but it's not how many people who are parents to minor children don't have a named guardian. And sometimes when I have this conversation, even with family members, given this is what I do, we'll hear, well, I know that if something happens to me, my sister is going to take my son, or and that's all well and good. You should have those conversations. We should be talking about these things with our families and having that open dialogue. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, unless you have it in an actual document, unless you have written this down as part of your estate plan, it could be contested. I mean, you just have no guarantees that if something were to happen to you, that things will work out as you hope that they would, and a court might have to get involved, and that's just the last thing that you want. Again, these are like the worst questions that we ever want to think about as parents. No one wants to think about this. It's a nightmare, but it's a worse nightmare to not have the planning in place. So if you need to have these things truly written down and actually documented. And then you have a trustee. And the trustee is responsible for carrying out the terms of a trust that is included within a will. And we're going to get more into trust as we move forward. Okay, so probate. So a will does not become valid until it is approved by the court. That's kind of the basic way that's sort of the fancy big word that we call probate. It's a good idea to give a copy of your will to your closest living relatives before the court will validate the will. Frankly, it's just a good idea to have a copy of your will with a couple close relatives anyway. It's just a smart thing to do. Your closest living relatives can challenge the validity of the will, claiming the will was not validly executed, you did not have the mental capacity to execute the will, and the will was a result of fraud or undue influence. And I'm sure you can imagine why we have these precautions, the precautions in place to potentially protect people that are losing mental capacity, and particularly, as I'm sure you can imagine, this often comes into play with elderly individuals. Elder abuse, elder financial abuse is a real problem, and it does happen, and it's so heartbreaking, but unfortunately, it is a reality that we see in our business, and we have to be hyper vigilant to protect the elderly community or anybody that has some sensitivity or struggles with capacity, to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. So we have these precautions in place specifically so that if your close relatives feel like somebody may have been influencing you in an improper manner, the will wasn't validly executed, that maybe, sometimes you'll see an elderly individual that might be struggling with capacity and they might try to change their will. We have to have these precautions in place so that we make sure that no one is going to get taken advantage of. It is an unfortunate reality that we sometimes see in our business. Probate can be expensive and time-consuming depending on the size, complexity, and jurisdiction of the estate. It doesn't have to be, but it can be depending on if it's a very large estate, a complex estate, and if there's a lot of context to the will. So I would shoot back to what I was talking about a revocable trust. A revocable trust is a great way to protect yourself, particularly if you fear that you might become incapacitated. And one of the great benefits of having a revocable trust is that you can avoid probate. Okay. So these are just some examples of outright what we call bequests. And this is kind of some sample language that you might see in a will. So a specific request is what we mean when we talk about how you're saying, okay, I give $10,000 to X or my daughter Sam. Residual bequests are when you say, and then I give the rest of my estate to this person. Fractional bequests, which we don't see as often, but we do see them sometimes, when you might say, I give 60% of my estate to this person and 40% of my estate to this person. Conditional bequests, I give $25,000 to X upon the condition she has graduated college at the time of my death. Again, you see those sometimes. We'll often see language in a will that specifies, in particular, that a grandchild has to have gotten their education before they inherit. Be careful making a general bequest of personal property to a group of beneficiaries. And the reason we say that is because, unfortunately, bequests can become a source of tension in a family, an unfortunate source of tension. And it's hard. I mean, it's the nature often of just the struggle of losing somebody and trying to come to terms with dividing up all the stuff, right? But the unfortunate side effect is that often there can be family tension, even in families that never had tension before. It's amazing what money and possessions coming into the picture can sometimes do to those relationships. So, attorneys can often help you resolve these disputes. So it comes back to what I said again about how you really want to make sure that you're working with an attorney that you feel comfortable with, that you're updating your will frequently, that you know that your attorney is going to still be in practice, because again, these disputes do sometimes happen, and attorneys are trained to mediate and help resolve these disputes. So you want to have somebody that's going to take the whole family picture into view, and really help solve those potential disputes in a sensitive and caring manner, as I know we would all want for our families. So a trust. So a trust can be created for the benefit of minor children, to protect the assets from the claims of the beneficiary's creditors, to protect a beneficiary who's fiscally irresponsible or has dependency issues, to protect a beneficiary with special needs, to potentially reduce estate taxes, and to benefit members of a blended family, and to benefit a non-citizen spouse. One thing I want to touch on is to protect the assets from the claims of the beneficiary's creditors. That includes divorce. So trusts are a great tool to protect from the claims of beneficiaries' creditors, particularly in the case of divorce. Beneficiaries of trust, someone who's fiscally irresponsible and has dependency issues, those, they feel like loaded words, right? Like fiscally irresponsible or has dependency issues. But the reality is that there are a lot of individuals for various reasons that really it makes sense for them to be a beneficiary of a trust and to be given money outright. It allows them to have somebody to assist them in making good financial decisions. It allows somebody to kind of step in and try to help protect that person going forward. And sometimes this includes a corporate trustee. TD serves as a corporate trustee in that capacity for many, many relationships. And that's my role at the bank. And it's my role to serve in that fiduciary capacity as the trust officer. And it means that I have a very close relationship with the families that I work with. And it's my job to make them understand that we're a team, and I'm there to help them, and I'm there to help resolve disputes, and I'm there to help protect for their future and plan for their future and help them make good decisions. And, again, there's sort of that misconception with trust that your money's tied up, that you're not in control of it. And this is not necessarily true. It's our role as fiduciaries to help that person make good decisions and truly to protect them so they have everything that they need. You'll see a beneficiary there with special needs. Now, special needs trusts are a very specific and complex area of law. If you have a child that has special needs that you feel would benefit from a special needs trust, I would encourage you specifically to seek out counsel that specifically deals in that area of law. A general trust and estate attorney may be able to do a special needs trust for you, but it's very specialized, and not all trust and estate attorneys are trained in that particular area of law. So if you have a family member, a child, a sibling, it can also be a parent who has some special needs, encourage you want to do your research, and you want to make sure that you're working with an attorney that is really their specialty, an area of law that they understand, because there's a lot of complexities specifically in that area. So healthcare directives and living will. So healthcare directives is also sometimes called a healthcare proxy. It's a document that allows you to choose someone to make medical and healthcare decisions on your behalf when you are unable to do so. And a living will is a document that specifies how you want to be medically treated if you are terminally ill or in a permanent vegetative state. A lot of you might remember, and this is going back, it's been quite a few years now, but there was a case in the news, you might remember Terri Schiavo. Living wills became a hot topic of conversation because this situation came up, and it was a national headline. Everyone kind of heard about the dispute. So I think more people learned about living wills because it was in our news for a while, but a lot of people still don't have them. So these are something that you want to think about. And again, to remember that your healthcare directive and your living will are not the same thing as your financial power of attorney, or they're different documents with different functions. And again, you'd be surprised at how often I might have a client's daughter or son send me a healthcare directive and say, oh, I need to, I need to make financial decisions for mom. Here's the power of attorney, but it's a healthcare proxy. So they're not the same documents, and you need both. So gifting, I'm not going to get, this is very complicated, so I don't want to get too far into this, except to tell you the advantage of making a gift is that the subsequent appreciation is kept out of your estate. And I'll go over that a little bit. It means the recipient will not receive a step up in basis when you die. So what does that mean? It basically means, so cost basis determines how much capital gains tax you'll pay when your property is sold someday. So a higher cost basis reduces future capital gains tax, and one downside to gifting is that you lose. So basically, one downside to gifting is that if you give away stock that has appreciation during your lifetime, the advantage is the person gets access to that money right away, okay? The downside is that if you'd held it until your death, you could have eliminated some or all of the capital gains tax. Now, if you're gifting cash, it doesn't matter, it's a moot point. But let's say that you have stock that you need to sell in order to raise the cash to gift. That's when this becomes a little bit more of an issue. And again, I would encourage you, talk to your accountant, your personal accountant, who can go over some of the tax issues with you, and always stay in contact with your attorney. Your attorney can absolutely help guide you if you're planning to gift. One caveat to that is that it's why stock gifts to charity are so popular, because there's no capital gains tax when you make a stock gift to charity. That's why a lot of people do it. And this is the estate tax overview. Frankly, the top part doesn't apply to very many people, but the bottom part means the annual gift exclusion is $15,000 for 2020, and gift splitting permits married couples to give $30,000. So it means that somebody, potentially grandmom and granddad, can each give $15,000. They can give $30,000 if they're working together. And they can give $15,000 to different individuals. That's what the number is for 2020. Okay. So in conclusion, because I want to be able to shoot it over to my team members here in a second. We went over a lot today, and I know it's a lot of material to think about. Decide your goals and objectives. If you don't have an estate plan or a will, the time is now to get one. Don't be embarrassed that you don't have one. Don't feel bad. A lot of people don't. A lot of people in lines of business that absolutely know better don't have them. So don't beat yourself up over it. Just make the decision that you're going to do it now, okay? There's no time like the present, particularly with everything that's going on in our world right now. Create a list of your assets. Just sit down, grab a piece of computer paper or a notebook, and just kind of list. You'd be surprised. A lot of people will sometimes say, I don't have any assets. I don't have, you'd be surprised. You have more than you may realize. Like I said, your car is an asset. Your house is an asset. All your personal effects are considered assets. Choose executors, guardians, trustees, and successors. These are hard decisions, no doubt, and they're discussions that you're going to want to have openly with your family, and you're going to want to have with your attorney. So it's why more than ever, you need to feel comfortable with who you're working with, and you need to feel comfortable taking ownership of having these difficult conversations. Review your beneficiary designations. Again, don't just throw it in a drawer, okay? Pull them out, take a look, see who you have listed as your beneficiary designation for those IRAs or various accounts, and make sure that they line up with your estate plan. Find professionals to work with to execute the plan. Find somebody to work with, whether it be you are naming a trustee, maybe you have a special needs child or sibling, and you know that you're going to need a corporate trustee to come in and help you protect them and protect their benefits. Okay, so you need to work on doing that. If you don't have an attorney you feel comfortable with, you need to work on finding an attorney that you feel comfortable with. And then finally, review that plan periodically. Your estate plan is a living document. It's not a document that you sign once and then you never look at again. It will grow and change with you as you change and grow as an individual throughout your life. So with that, what I'd like to do right now is turn the reins over to my colleagues, Carla and Cindy, and what they're going to do is to share some insights that they found on their, Carla, I see you there, okay, on the banking side, as, you know, from what we've been dealing with over the past couple months, some of the things that we've been seeing with what's been going on with COVID-19. So Carla, Cindy, you two want to jump in here?
Absolutely.
Here, let me take my screen down. How do I, let me unshare my screen for you so that you don't have to keep looking at it, if I can figure out how to do that.
And just, sorry, yeah, just before
Okay.
I switch over, just so everybody knows, we will be posting the presentation from today after today's event. So for those of you who are looking to read a little bit more of the detail on the PowerPoint that Mary Kay provided us, that will be available on our website.
Great, good. Thank you so much for doing that.
So Cindy, I don't know if you want to go first or you want me to. It's up to you.
Go ahead, Carla. We're a team.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mary Kay. That was so informative. I actually did all of that a year ago, but you made me think of some more things. I want to go back and reread and make sure I did some of the extra things that you spoke about. So that was extremely informative. So thank you. I'm happy to be here with all of you. My store that I manage is located in Marlton, if anybody needs to ever come and see me, right on Route 70. So to parlay off what Mary Kay said, I want to kind of go into a little bit about the relationship building portion, especially during COVID right now, because I know if you bank with TD or any other bank, it's probably been a little bit frustrating for people in this type of capacity when you have to not be able to come in and have that face-to-face interaction with the staff at any bank, and most directly with TD Bank, because we want to make things easy. We want to make things convenient, right? That's our model. So right now you're going in and you're having to do a lot of things in our drive-through, and it's I understand your frustration. It takes a lot longer. Things are taking more time. And what we want to help our customers understand is we're never going away. Our brick and mortar stores are never going away. But we want to help you understand how to build a better relationship with your bank so that we can help educate you on what's going to be not necessarily different, but help you understand that we're always going to be here, but banking has changed a little bit right in this experience now. So we've taught our customers how to bank a little bit differently. We have mobile banking, right? And you're able to do your banking through your mobile phone, and you're able to use our ATMs. And so with that being said, some customers still want to do it and some customers don't. However, we have to evolve. And to parlay again off Mary Kay's point, if you had a will done, and I'm going to try to assimilate this a little bit, if you had a will done 20 or 30 years ago, you need to evolve because them things change. So you need to go back and take a look at that and make sure that the changes that you need to make with that, or if you haven't done it, you need to do it. So it's the same thing with banking. We need to evolve a little bit and understand that what we used to do as part of our comfort still needs to evolve a little bit more so that we're not asking you to do things that are that are completely different, but a little bit more out of your comfort zone so that you can also evolve with the changes that are taking place now. We're still there for your support. We're still there to help you. We're still there to help you get through this and to help you build that relationship with your bank. If you're not comfortable doing something, if you're not comfortable making a deposit in with your phone, with your ATM, and you don't want to sit in the drive-through, call your local store. Call and speak to them over the phone and say to them, I don't know how to do it. I don't know what I'm doing. Speak to the manager. Speak to one of the customer service representatives and explain to them, help me figure this out. Get to know who they are so that you can build that relationship and work with them, because banking is about relationships. That's what you need to do. You need to build that relationship with your local bank, because while we are a large bank from Maine to Florida, we started about building relationships. That's what this is all about. It's about building relationship and getting to know all of our clients constantly. And we want to do this. We want to be there for our customers. We want to be there in the trenches, and we want to help our customers, because we realize that our customers, they don't understand banking, and they don't understand what they may need to do or how to do it, how to release of funds if they need to, what paperwork they may need if they need to open an estate account. We don't expect that you know how to do any of this, and we don't expect that you need to come here and make 2 or 3 different stops. If you need to open an account, we understand that you can't do it online. We might have to walk out to your car right now to do it. So give us a call ahead of time and get the information that you need. If you don't want to go on the website and take a look, it can be confusing. So call a store and speak to us. We want to be here and help you. We want to talk to you about it over the phone. We can do all of those things. If you don't want to call the 800 number, call a store. I understand that sometimes the store phone numbers are a little bit busy, but we're here to help you. You can stop by, knock on the store door, get our business card, send us an email, and give us a phone call. It's not always as it seems.
Carla, it's Cindy. I couldn't express what you're saying enough about the relationships. It's key. We work and operate as a team of professionals. And the nice thing is that you as a partner are always doing a great job, and Mary Kay, making the professional introductions to TD Wealth, the private client group. Our clients and customers have access to cell phones. There's a lot of times throughout the year, I work in this remote environment throughout the year, not just during COVID. So I can triage the situation quickly. A lot of times we could do things remotely throughout the year that you don't even have to step foot into a branch or wait in those long lines. Take care of yourself first. As professionals, we always take care of everybody else, and sometimes we need to take a step back and make sure that our affairs are in order. So the nice thing working with the partners at TD, we will provide a healthy second opinion. Whether you're transitioning between banks or you want to have a second bank as a backup plan, you just never know, life happens. I always say be prepared as possible. Mistakes can happen, but if you're prepared, it enhances your probability of being more successful. So we're willing and open to provide anyone on the line a second opinion. If you have a loved one that you're concerned about or you have relationships at TD, we'd love the opportunity to get to know you and deepen and enhance those relationships.
And do you mind if I jump in for a second, Carla and Cindy? One thing I wanted to point out, because I know I had encouraged everyone to reach out to their attorney. Don't fear that you can't do that right now because you can't meet in person. Most attorneys are seeing clients right now virtually. They can set up something just like this. They'll set up a Zoom or a WebEx. They're happy to talk to you over the phone, because I know there's been some hesitation right now. You know, I've spoken with some clients that they have concerns and they really want to talk to an attorney about the estate plan, but they're just unsure because we can't have meetings right now. You know, everyone is sensitive right now to the fact that we're all kind of in the same boat with this. Like, this is how we have to meet each other. But professionals will make it work for you. So don't hesitate to get what you need to get done. You know, don't hesitate to get that estate plan updated because you worry that an attorney can't meet with you. They will find a way.
Absolutely. And the same with your bankers. If you have questions, call us. Maybe it's not as quick as a turnaround as you would like in 5 minutes, an hour, but we will help you and we will get back to you. We're here to help. We value our clients. We want our clients. we're here to be with you. It's not atypical as you would walk in and wait a few minutes. We might walk out to your car with a mask. We might ask you to sign documents in your car. We might ask you to do it in drive-through, but we are here to help you, and we want to. And we don't want you waiting in lines for hours. We can send you a text message now. We can have you do your banking mobily. We can have you do your banking in our ATMs. Some customers don't want to do that, but there are other things that we can help you. If you call us, we can advise you. A lot of customers haven't called and they get upset, which is why I encourage you to reach out to your local stores. That's where you build that relationship.
So this is Chrissy, and I think something that I'm hearing from all of you, which I'm sure our attendees very much appreciate, is this sense of ownership, right? So I think especially now we all have this reaction of, I can't control anything. What can I control? I think the advice that you're giving of just asking for help where and when you need it is very powerful, especially in finances, right? So for a lot of us, as you all were saying, finances can be pretty scary, right? It's something we don't want to talk about. We don't want to think about it. We just want it to live where it is and for it to kind of go away. But what's interesting to me is, during this whole COVID season, it's given us all a minute to sort of pull back and take the time that we need to really get our houses in order. So I definitely appreciate what you're saying, and I think it will be helpful for our attendees. I want to switch it over to Andy to make sure we get to a few questions before we conclude today's event. So Andy, can you handle that for us? Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few brief questions for you guys. I'll just shoot it out there and whoever wants to answer can answer. What are the top 5 things to think about for financial security when beginning to plan a person's demise?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat it, Andrea? You broke up just a little bit in the beginning.
What are the top 5 things to think about for financial security when beginning to plan for a person's demise?
For planning for a person's demise. Well, Cindy, you can feel free to jump in too. I mean, I think the top thing, is making sure your estate planning documents are in order. I mean, I think that's key, and I think goes back to a lot of what I was talking about. Carla and Cindy, I don't want to take them all. If you want to jump in,
I would also say, to your point, making sure that you have liquidity is important, because having a can-do attitude and have those documents is great. But if there's assets that are tied up, or there could be a taxable event to get to those assets if something happens, God forbid. I think during this time, COVID, for everybody, it's having liquidity, having a backup plan, and having those sources. Whether it's pulling from a home equity line, it's having enough cash reserves on the sideline, so during these market iterations, you don't have to be worried about pulling from retirement accounts or other sources. You have enough cash set aside because we plan for events. So I'm sorry, Carla.
That's okay. To Cindy and Mary Kay's point, they're absolutely correct. As far as liquidity, depending on what's going on, and you need to have access to your accounts. A power of attorney is null and void if someone passes away. So in order for you to have access to your accounts, there's a different method you could go. You can either have somebody be a joint account signer on your bank accounts, and then that means they will have access to pay your bills, or you're going to have to wait till that will gets probated. And once that will gets probated, then they have to complete an L8, and this takes time. So depending on your financial situation, you need to start having conversations with your family, friends, because if somebody is not a joint account holder in my banking world, and it's just, let's say, me on an account and something happens to me and I have a power of attorney, that's great if I'm incapacitated and they can still continue to pay my bills. But once I pass away, power of attorney is null and void. So then they need to come in with the probated, they need to come in with the will already probated. So then they would get a short certificate in the state of New Jersey, okay, along with the death certificate. But then they still need to have an L8 completed before I can give them the date of death balance before they could have access to those funds. So it's a process. So in that point, if somebody's house and mortgage needs to be paid, and other bills, they necessarily can't have access to that account, even if the short certificate which means the will is probated, says that Mary Kay is my executor and can have access to my accounts. We still have to wait. So we're looking at, let's get somebody as a joint account holder. It gets a little hairy, and that's where, if you need to have some questions answered to me, give me a call, because that's where it gets a little hairy, which is meaning that liquidity part that Cindy's talking about. You need to have some assets there.
And Carla, to your point, that's where, again, as team members, we can provide that second opinion. Whether you choose
Absolutely.
the bank, TD, or another institution, a lot of the biggest mistake that I see working with a lot of the retail partners or the stores is that clients go in and they're concerned about FDIC insurance, and they start changing the title of their account. Well, like
Absolutely.
I mentioned in the beginning, you could be conflicting all of the legal documents that you put in place and how you wanted your affairs to be carried out. So I think it's important to put the brakes on. It's healthy to get a second opinion, whether you're in the medical industry, you're in the financial industry. I think it's healthy before you make those emotional decisions.
Yes, we see that a lot, unfortunately, and we want to try to advise our clients just the same, but we can't let them know what to do. We could just advise to a certain perspective.
And
Andrea, I don't know if we had 5, but we got pretty close there, I thought.
Mary Kay, I just want to mention to everybody on the line, the nice thing is we operate as a team of professionals. We will place our customers with the right partners at the bank who have a can-do attitude, who can get things done right. I just, again, the relationship is key, especially during these times like Carla had mentioned. And when you work with a partner in the TD Wealth Management team or private banking team, we're salaried. We are fiduciaries. So we have to put our best interest, your best interest above ours in the banks at all times, which I think is very, very important to understand that.
Okay, thank you all so much. So unfortunately, that's going to conclude our event for today. Again, I want to thank you all for participating with us today. I want to thank you, Mary Kay, Carla. It's just, and Cindy, it's just been so powerful, I think, for us to, as women, have the opportunity to have a space where we can be reassured that we have the tools that we need to take control of our lives. So that's really wonderful. We'll be doing another one of these events in a few weeks. So please check out our website. It's July 1st. If you want to attend again, you may hear different questions, right? You may hear a little bit of a different take on today's programming. So please feel free to join us. We do have some more virtual programming happening in July. So I would encourage you all to visit our website. Please feel free to share it throughout your networks. Both at Rowan and beyond. The intention of our group is to really help to empower women throughout the South Jersey region. So in order to do that, we need your help. We need you to help us spread the word about our events and to get engaged. Thank you again so much for joining us today. We hope to see you soon. Take care and be well. Bye.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Have a great day.
Be safe.
Thanks.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.